welcome to Module 2 of the SBH Teaching Kitchen's online cooking series. My name is Emily, and in today's lesson, I'm going to show you how to make fluffy whole wheat pancakes with a lemon blueberry syrup. We're going to make our lemon blueberry syrup first because we want this to be done and ready to go by the time our pancakes are ready. So for our lemon blueberry syrup, we are going to be using some frozen blueberries. You could also use fresh if you would like. I'm going to use 1 bag of frozen blueberries. This is 10 ounces and is going to be about 2 cups. We're also going to sweeten it just a little bit with some honey. If you don't have honey, you could also use any sweetener that you like. You could use maple syrup or regular sugar, brown sugar. You could use a sugar substitute if you would like. Any kind of sweetener, we're going to use about 3 tablespoons. For a little bit of nice bright flavor, we're also going to add a lemon. We're going to use the zest on the outside as well as the juice from 1 whole lemon. And then we're going to add a little bit of water. This just helps to get our syrup going, but those blueberries do release a lot of their own juices as they cook. And then finally, we're going to add some cornstarch. Cornstarch is a thickener. It's going to help our syrup to be nice and thick. If you don't have cornstarch, don't feel like you need to buy it to make this recipe. You're just going to end up cooking your syrup a little bit longer to help it to thicken up without that cornstarch. And then what we're going to do is just put everything in our pot, mix it together, simmer it for about 10 minutes, and we have a really easy lemon blueberry syrup. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. First I'm going to add my blueberries. These are frozen. They don't have to be frozen when you go to make your syrup. You can let them thaw a little bit if you would like. I like using frozen berries. It's just something nice to have on hand. I find that they're pretty inexpensive, although I will say in the summertime when those berries are on sale, I recommend buying berries if you see them really cheap. You can actually take that entire blueberry container, stick it in your freezer, and have frozen blueberries on hand whenever you would like, and save a little money while you're doing it. Next we're going to add our honey. So we're going to add 3 tablespoons of this. Next we're going to add half a cup of cold water. Next we're going to add our lemon zest and our lemon juice. So the zest of the lemon is just that yellow part that's on the outside. It has all of the lemon essential oils in it. It smells really great. It tastes really great. We want those delicious flavors in our sauce. You don't have to do this step. It's just something a little bit extra that's going to make our sauce that much more delicious. To zest our lemon, we need one of these. This is called a microplane. It's like a grater, but the holes are just really, really small. And to zest, we just take our lemon and rub it back and forth over that grater to get that zest off. When you're zesting, you'll see that we have this bright yellow part and then this white part underneath. You don't want to get that white part. It's called the pith. It's very bitter. We don't want that in our sauce. And if you don't have lemons on hand, you could also use other citrus if you like. Limes would work really well here. You could also use an orange. Once our lemon is zested, I'm going to go ahead and cut this in half. And then I'm just going to use this citrus juicer to get all of the juice out. That lemon juice just adds a really nice brightness to our syrup. Without it, it might taste too sweet and not really have any other flavors to it. So that lemon juice or anything acidic helps to bring out some more flavors in our syrup. We are also going to add just a little bit of salt. Like that lemon juice, the salt helps to bring out more flavors in our syrup. Without it, it can taste kind of one note. You're not going to get all of those really wonderful flavors out, so just a little bit of salt helps with the flavor development of our sauce. So I'm just using a 1/4 teaspoon there. And finally, we're going to add our cornstarch. So I'm adding 2 teaspoons here. And then I'm going to give this a good stir before it gets hot. Again, we want this to be cold so that our cornstarch is going to mix in really well into our sauce and not lump up too much. Once your cornstarch is dissolved, you don't see any more white bits in your sauce, you can go ahead and turn your stove on. You can start on a really high heat. We want to bring this up to a boil first, and then we will drop the heat down to low to allow it to simmer. Once your syrup is at a rapid boil, then you can go ahead and turn your heat down to low. So rapid boil means that we see big bubbles coming to the surface of our liquid. A simmer means that we might have some bubbles, but we're not seeing a lot of action here. We want to turn the heat down to low because there's sugar in this. We don't want that to burn on the bottom of the pan. If you would like, while this is cooking, you can also take a potato masher or a fork and gently mash the blueberries as they're cooking. That's just going to help to speed up the process a little bit more. Our sauce has been simmering for 10 minutes now, and I can tell that it's gotten a lot thicker. One thing to keep in mind too is because we added that cornstarch, this sauce will continue to thicken as it cools. So if your sauce seems like maybe it's still a little bit too thin and you just want it a little bit thicker, that's actually the perfect time to take your sauce off of the heat. So I'm going to let this cool down, and while it's cooling, I am going to add a splash of vanilla, about 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. So I just added the tiniest splash of vanilla there. I'm going to give this a stir just to make sure that's incorporated. And now I'm just going to put my sauce off to the side and let it cool down before I transfer it to a jar or some kind of container with a lid on it. Now that our syrup is done, we can go ahead and make our pancakes. These are going to be 100% whole wheat pancakes, but even though they're whole wheat, they are still going to be light, fluffy, and delicious. And we only need a few simple ingredients in order to make these. So I'm going to start by combining together all of my wet ingredients, and then I'll move on to my dry ingredients. For our wet ingredients, first we need 1 cup of milk. Any kind of milk will work. If you can't have regular milk, non-dairy milk will work as well. And then to our milk, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of vinegar. This might seem a little bit weird, but we're essentially making homemade buttermilk. So instead of going out and buying buttermilk, you can just make it with some milk and some vinegar. If you don't have vinegar, you can use lemon juice, lime juice, anything acidic is going to work in there. So we're going to let this milk hang out. It is going to start to get a little bit chunky. That's normal, I promise. And that just helps with the overall taste and texture of our pancakes. If you think of a traditional pancake, they're usually buttermilk pancakes, and they're like that for a reason. They just taste so, so good. So while we let our milk hang out, we're going to go ahead and combine the rest of our wet ingredients. We're going to start with 1 egg, and this is 1 large egg. And I'm going to go ahead and give that egg a quick whisk before I add the rest of my ingredients. So next to my egg, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of oil. I'm using canola oil. I'm also going to add 1 tablespoon of brown sugar. You could also just use regular white sugar, honey, maple syrup. Any kind of sweetener will work. And then next we're going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. I usually just eyeball the vanilla. And then once everything is mixed together, you can go ahead and add your milk. Now that our liquid ingredients are all combined, we can go ahead and put this off to the side for now. And then we're going to mix together our dry ingredients. For our dry ingredients, we're going to use 1 cup of whole wheat flour. If you're not used to baking with whole wheat flour, you could always do half white flour and half whole wheat flour as you get used to the taste and working with the whole wheat flour. To our whole wheat flour, we are going to add 2 teaspoons of baking powder and a ½ teaspoon of baking soda. Those are what are going to allow our pancakes to rise and be nice and fluffy. I'm going to add ½ teaspoon of cinnamon, and then I'm going to add 1/8 teaspoon of salt. Just a little bit of salt in there helps to bring out all the flavor of our pancakes and make sure that they don't just taste one note and boring and flat. Once all of our dry ingredients are mixed together, you can just go ahead and combine those. And then once everything is well combined, we're going to pour our wet ingredients on top of our dry ingredients. Now when we're mixing all of this together, you want to be careful that we're not going to over-mix our ingredients. So I recommend using a rubber spatula instead of using a whisk. And we're just going to gently fold the ingredients on top of each other. You want to get to the point where you don't see any more dry flour. You have somewhat of a uniform texture, but it's okay if you still have some lumps. We don't want to overmix this, because as we're mixing, we are developing gluten by introducing liquid to our flour. The more gluten that we have, the more mixing that we do, the tougher our pancakes are going to be. So by doing minimal mixing, that'll make sure that our pancakes are nice and tender. So I've mixed everything together. We have some lumps, but for the most part we have a nice even texture. And we can go ahead and cook our pancakes. So I'm going to heat my pan to medium-low temperature. What happens if our temperature is too high is we're going to burn the outside of our pancake before the inside is done cooking. So these do have to cook a little bit on the slower side. I recommend using a non-stick pan so you don't have to use a lot of oil while you're cooking. If you don't have a non-stick pan, that's okay. You can use any pan that you like, but you might need a little bit of extra oil to make sure those pancakes don't stick. I'm using a cast iron here. It's essentially non-stick, so I'm just going to use a little bit of a spray oil on my pan just to give it a light coating of oil as I'm cooking those pancakes. To measure out my pancakes, I'm going to use a 1/4 cup measure. I find this gives you a really nice sized pancake without going overboard, and if you're using 1/4 cup measure, you're going to get 8 pancakes in the end, so we'll have about 4 servings of pancakes. Now I'm just going to give my pan a quick spray. You don't want a lot of oil in there, just enough to coat the bottom. And I'm going to go ahead and scoop my batter out and drop that into my pan. I recommend using a really large pan to make pancakes so you can cook multiple at once. If you're using a really small pan like I have, you end up having to cook only 1 or 2 at a time, and it can take a while to cook all of those pancakes. If you want, you can even freeze pancakes, keep them in the freezer, so then you have pancakes anytime you want them. And again, you just reheat them in the toaster, and they taste fresh and delicious as if you just made them. When we're cooking our pancakes, we know it's time for them to flip when we start to see bubbles come to the surface all over the pancake, and the edges of the pancake will start to look cooked. So that cooked portion will turn a different color. It's going to start to look a little more opaque. You can also, if you want to, always just take a little peek under your pancake, see if it's starting to turn a nice golden brown color. So if we have bubbles and a golden brown color and we're looking cooked along the edges, that's a good sign that we can flip our pancake. So this one is ready to be flipped. As your pancakes are cooking, you should get some rise out of them as well. These should be about 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch thick. Once your pancake is golden brown on both sides, you can go ahead, transfer that to a plate. You see we have this nice golden brown color, and I actually like to keep mine in a warm oven while I'm cooking my batches of pancakes. Once we're finished cooking our pancakes, you can see we have a really nice stack of pancakes here. Your serving size is going to be 2 pancakes, and we made 8 total, so this recipe will feed 4 people. And finally, to serve, I have my blueberry syrup that has just been chilling on the counter while I've been making my pancakes. You can go ahead and give that about 2 tablespoons of syrup on top of your serving. And you can see I left those blueberries whole. I think they just look so nice like that. And there we have it, our delicious whole wheat pancakes with our lemon blueberry syrup. Thank you again for joining us for Module 2 of the SBH Teaching Kitchen's online cooking series. This has been the recipe for our fluffy whole wheat pancakes and lemon blueberry syrup, and we'll see you again for the next one.